I think I'm almost here, at the spot where the civilest part of the Civil War happened. But figuring out what civil really means, that is where things get complicated. Okay, so if you saw my last video, you know that it was the coldest part of the Cold War. And I got this comment that I should do the civilest part of the Civil War. But when I thought about it, I thought, wait, what was the civilest part of the Civil War? What does that even mean? The same way that I found the chilliest part of the Cold War, I wondered what the most civil, the most polite part of the Civil War could be. I'm just gonna pause the intro to show you this incredibly scary spider. And at first I found some heartwarming anecdotes, but nothing really meaningful. And then I found this place in 2 documents that I think might actually help us find the answer. Let me give you some context. George B. McClellan was the commanding general of the U.S. Army from November 1861 to March 1862 during the Civil War. Top dog, in charge. And listen, there's so much commentary on how good or bad he was, but I'm gonna give you the consensus view. This is a political cartoon from his 1864 presidential campaign against Abe Lincoln. So this is a spoiler, they were not lifelong buddies. See, McClellan was too cautious as general. He tried for peace and war. He was, in a word, too civil. For one, he had an old-school Napoleonic mindset that battles should be fought like big chess games on clearly defined fields of play. But as the little Mac might tell you, he was also portrayed as a bit of a wimp, too cowardly to attack, too cautious. Lincoln wrote him about his hesitation and pleaded with him, "But you must act," as McClellan dithered in his campaigns. Little Mac tried to ride both horses, peace and war, and that was nowhere clearer than in his letter to Lincoln, which was written right around here. Just had to break in here to say that I got slightly lost and I have to drive to another place, but I'm gonna find this spot. So I'm in the right place now. I'm at Berkeley Plantation, which is the home of Benjamin Harrison, and also Harrison's Point, Harrison's Landing, which is where I want to be going. Yeah, it's really beautiful here. Very, very cool. But I have a specific destination in mind. That is an unlikely water fountain success story right there. The truth is, I should have just come here first. I knew this was Harrison's Landing, but I wanted to get away without paying for a ticket, so I tried to sneak through and it did not work. But this is awesome. This is definitely worth checking out. It's amazing. Okay, so I'm here, Harrison's Landing, a spot where McClellan camped out after he failed to take Richmond. McClellan's July 7th, 1862 letter is a crystal clear call for civility. It is the civilest part of the Civil War. He starts by affirming the war. The Constitution and the Union must be preserved, whatever may be the cost in time, treasure, and blood. But then he begins to pivot. This rebellion has assumed the character of a war. So here, Lincoln and company had kind of tried to depict the Confederates as criminals, not as another nation that they were in war with. The idea was they didn't want to legitimize them. They'd kind of given up on that by this point. And so here's the big chunk of the letter that really matters. It should not be a war looking at the subjugation of people of any state in any event. It should not be at all a war upon population, but against armed forces and political organizations. Neither confiscation of property, political executions of persons, territorial organization of states, or forcible abolition of slavery should be contemplated for a moment. What is he doing here if he's not calling for civility? Good wars, civil wars. Don't attack the people or their property, and here he is including the enslaved people as property. This is horrifying to us today, and it was horrifying to Lincoln as policy and as a kind of tactic. That very month, Lincoln drafted a preliminary proclamation, the rough draft of the Emancipation Proclamation that freed Southern enslaved people. It was, in a way, a direct response to McClellan's call for civility in war. The letter that he wrote right around here. McClellan continued to dither, and in 1862, he was fired. He was stuck on those two horses, trying to be what he saw as civil, but what Lincoln saw as harmful to the war. The most civil part of the Civil War was the opposite of civil, because it would result in the dissolution of the United States. I don't want to leave you with a totally negative view of the civilest part in Civil War history. There's actually a second document that's pretty important and pretty darn civil. This one, by Francis Lieber, Franz in Germany. Lieber was really a legal theorist, and when Lincoln embraced this all-out approach to war against McClellan, he needed to complement it with restraint and, honestly, civility. Lieber's General Orders number 100 did that. It said that military necessity let warring powers do a lot of stuff, like Lincoln wanted, but it also put some guardrails in. Stuff like no poison, no torture, no needless destruction of property. It was an acknowledgement that the boundaries of war had become less civil, but new ideas of civility had to be established. These rules changed military engagement forever. The Libra Code led to war regulations that, at least in theory, restrained contact. The Civil War really did make war more civil. I think the thing that makes this video title interesting is that war is inherently impolite, incivil, and I don't want to reconcile the absurdity of that too quickly. McClellan and Lieber's civil solutions both fell short in big ways. Lieber's solution created more civility for war, but it tied a giant loophole of military necessity. And McClellan's solution would have been more civil, but it would have led to an unjust conclusion to the war and a lengthening of the enslavement of workers in the South. Figuring out what a civil war is messy. And these two documents show that the solutions to it, they're just as messy too. We don't necessarily want our wars to be civil if the conclusion to them is unjust. Right behind me, right behind this camera, it's the dwellings of the enslaved workers on this plantation. Would it have been more civil to not include their liberation as a strategy during the war? I'm gonna try to Instagram influence here later, so I'll let you know how that goes. Thank you for watching this video. I do personal history type stuff here. I'd love it if you subscribed and commented. Comment is where I got the idea for this video, from a really awesome, funny YouTuber named The Toxic Gee. Anyway, his channel's pretty funny. His last video, I won't spoil it, but made me nostalgic for college dorm room social politics, if that made sense. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.